Hi everyone, in this video I want to show you my game which I just played in the Arona Open. This was round 4 today. The tournament didn't go so well until now, but now I'm hoping to come back, and this win which I just had was pretty nice, and I want to show it to you. So I played Gallagher Daniel, British player, rated 2243, and he played e4. I should add that today is another double round, so the round was at 10, and the next game will be at 5. So it's quite a tough schedule here, as it usually is at open tournaments. So he played e4. I went for the French defense, and we got this classical line of the Steinitz right here. It's all a bunch of theory, and here I went for the system with a6. In general, in this video, I also want to include like a theory section. If there are some of you watching who want to play the French or who are already playing the French, I hope that I can provide you with some hopefully valuable insights here. So I went for a6. I really like the system. I already played it a couple of times. The idea is in most cases to play b5, but as we will see in the game, it's not the only plan. Qd2 would be the main move, I believe, and then b5 is the idea. And in general, black here wants to play b4, a5, and then bishop a6 to get rid of this this bad French bishop on c8, which is kind of boxed in by my own pawns. So he went a3. Sorry, I just want to mention knight e2 is another idea for white to build the center with c3, just to stabilize the center. There are quite a few options here. Queen b6 is by far the best move, and after queen c1, white wants to stabilize the center with c3. Black has a few options. I think bishop b7 or f6 are probably the best moves. I just want to mention this nice idea which I played against Maxime Vachier Lagrave in 2018, g5. Kind of a typical idea for the French, just brutally hitting the center, and it's not objectively totally correct, but actually in this game against Vachier, which was a classical game, objectively I even managed to equalize. So if you're interested in this, you can definitely have a look at that. But let's stick to the game. He went a3, and now b5 again would make a lot of sense, but here after knight e2 he gets a pretty good version of this, and he will stabilize the center with c3. I didn't want to go for this. cd4 is what I played and what I still checked, and here after bishop c5 he played queen d2, and again I have quite a few options here. What is kind of my main line is bishop d4, just to take everything and go queen b6, but this endgame which is reached here is quite dry. I mean, black is probably equal here, or at least close to equal. Black is extremely solid, but I really wanted to win this game, and here white is just super safe. The knight will land on d4, and there's not much black can do. I mean, black always has these ideas with f6 or even g5, just undermining the center, but yeah, I didn't really feel like this would be too much for me to try. g5 is another possible idea here, which I also knew, but this is kind of forced and I didn't want to go in there. Maybe also my opponent knew it. He was playing pretty fast until now, so I went for this logical move, castle. My opponent castled long, and now I take on d4 and go b5. Unfortunately, I have to give up this bishop, otherwise I'm not really getting b5. I mean, I could also take with the bishop and then go b5. I could also take, with the knight and then go b5, but then I'm not really getting d4 anytime soon. For example, if he takes, then I don't have a lot of power to support this b4 push as in the game. So I took with the bishop, b5, h4. I still knew this. I checked it maybe 1 year ago. Rook b8, rook h3. I was pretty scared here actually, because my opponent played all the best moves. b4, a b4, rook b4. But here he went into quite a long think, and I was obviously quite happy about that. I still knew that this was in my file, that I prepared it at some point, but the only thing I knew was either bishop f2 or bishop g1 is the correct move, and it's basically the only move for white to gain an edge in this. I didn't remember during the game, but I checked it now, and the best move is bishop g1, and the point is actually quite deep, because after queen a5, threatening queen a1 with checkmate here, king b1, knight c5, now knight a2, knight e4, queen e1, and now the bishop is on g1, and I cannot take on f2. And here white is almost winning in this position, because this is kind of the worst case scenario for black. Now the pawn on a6 is weak, white has these fantastic bishops, the rook comes into the game, and this is just horrible for me. After bishop g1, I'm not sure what I would have done, maybe bishop b7, but after something like 92, white is just better. I can try to start an attack somehow, like queen e7, rook c8 maybe, but if white manages to consolidate, he will have a very good game. Bishop f2 was the move I thought in the game what was correct. Then we see the same line as before. Now 92 runs into 94, and now I can take on f2, and I'm simply winning here. The knight on a2 cannot move because there is rook a1. But my opponent played 92, and I quickly played a5, and this is what I wanted. I really want to get rid of this bishop on c8, which isn't doing much, and trade it for a more active piece in white's camp. He played bishop f2 here. In the game, I was calculating bishop c3 most of the time, and I wasn't quite sure what I would do. Rook b6 was like my worst case option. Don't need to calculate much here. I just saw bishop a6 is coming, and I have the idea of knight c5, 94. I thought this should be fine, but I was also looking at this fantastic resource bishop a6 here, just leaving the exchange on b4. And here I wasn't quite sure what is happening. I thought I should have enough compensation, but if it would have happened in the game, I'm not sure I would have been brave enough to go there. But it turns out that black is actually fine here. Something like this and queen a5, knight is coming to e4, and black has great compensation. Also bishop a6, knight c6 is actually quite dangerous for black. Another nice trick which I saw, knight c5, again with the same idea. This would be more or less okay for black, with queen a5 to come. But he has knight d4, and here, after knight d4, bishop b4, I saw that the rook on h3 does quite a good job, because otherwise knight b3 would be working. But here, this fork doesn't work because the rook protects b3. Anyway, my opponent went bishop f2, and now bishop a6, knight d4, knight d4. And here he went bishop a6, which I was quite happy about. In the game, I thought bishop d4 is not clear at all after takes. It's a very sharp position, because if white is in time to push things like f5, rook g3, then I'm in huge trouble. But it seems like, at least the engine says, that that black is the one who is fighting for something first. In the game, I would have probably gone queen e7, which is also a good move. I just want maybe to play knight c5, knight e4. Also, the rook could swing into the game with rook c8. And it doesn't seem like white is in time to start something there. But the engine likes this move f6, which I totally missed here. After ef6, knight f6. The knight will get a fantastic outpost on e4. And after rook g3, rook f7 again. Renewing the idea of knight e4, just protecting g7. But my opponent went bishop takes a6, and I simply retrieved the knight to c6. Other moves I also thought about, but it didn't turn out to be so well. Like queen b6, for example, I calculated this line here, rook b2, queen d4, but in the end, I'm not winning much, because king e2 comes and everything is protected, and I only have 2 pawns, and white's king actually turns out to be quite safe, and white would be winning. Knight c5 was also one idea, but here after bishop d4, knight e6, h5, white gets a much better version than before, because my knight is on a6, not as good as on d7, and I don't have these f6 ideas here. So I simply went back with the knight, and it turns out that this bishop, this white's bishop on a6 is actually quite a bad piece. He can go to d3 always, but here white is just really slow with his attack, and I'm simply coming with queen b8 or queen e7, rook b8, as happened in the game. He went back with the bishop, and here I thought a bit too long. I went queen e7 in the end. Queen b8 was the move I originally intended to play. And after c3, rook a4, here I also talked to my opponent. He said that bishop h7 works here, but after king h7, queen c2, it looks like a double attack. But here I have this nice move, rook e4, just protecting everything. And here I'm just winning. Here I just thought rook e3, this pin, and still he's threatening to take, and then d7 is hanging. like everything is winning here. I think queen c7 is also good enough if I'm not mistaken, and simply going into this. But in the game I saw a really nice idea which I want to show, which is f5. And if he takes, I can simply take with the f-pawn. And if he takes on f6, knight f6, and now I'm protecting the rook, and this pin on d7 is also broken. So queen b8 would have been better probably, but my issue in the game was that queen c2, and here I only calculated rook e1 check, and after king d2, here in this line here I wasn't sure what is happening, and the engine also said, I just checked, it's totally unclear now. Always after g6 it looks like I'm winning this bishop, but something like h5 could be extremely dangerous for me here. But what I missed in the game was that simply rook f4 works here. I just missed this pawn is hanging, and after bishop h7, simply king h8, and bishop is hanging, pawn on e5 will fall, and I'm just winning here. But queen e7, what I played was also a good move. I simply wanted to prepare rook b8 and hit the pawn on b2 with the full force here. c3, rook b7. I still have to watch out for these tricks. For example, rook b3 would really run into bishop h7, and then I'm really losing the exchange. I went rook b7, but here actually white is already lost. I mean, I think the critical moment here was that he took on a6 and didn't take on d4. I think this would have put up a much bigger fight, and here the position is just really hard to play already. I think the engine showed here white should go bishop a6, just preventing me from doubling the rooks right away, but I intended to go rook b3, and honestly I don't know what the idea was of the computer. I'm just playing rook b8 next, and it also looks pretty bad for white. So this happened in the game, queen d3. I just have to watch out. I obviously cannot take. This would end pretty badly for me. But I can just go g6, and I don't have to be afraid of any h5 happening. White is just not in time, and my king is super safe on g8. Rook d2, and now knight c5. Rook d2 is the only move to protect b2, obviously. And knight c5 he has to take, otherwise I go knight b3, forking king and rook. So he took. And now he went rook f3. There's not much to tell here. White is simply lost, even though material is still equal. My attack is simply much faster than his. For example, queen e3, simply d4, and white's position is just collapsing. I just shouldn't trade queens here. Even if I would trade queens, I would probably still be better, but it would make my task much harder. He went rook f3. The idea being that now queen g1 he can protect with queen f1. Otherwise, queen g1 would also be a threat. For example, h5, I thought queen g1, rook d1, and at least I'm winning g2, and pawn on f4 will also fall pretty soon. By the way, there's also mate on b2. So that's why he went rook f3, and now I simply went a4, and he cannot really stop this idea of a3. He tried to do so with rook c2, and probably he thought that a3 b4 was still hanging on. But I had a forced win here. a3 is not the only winning move, but it's simply wins the game by force. So I played it, but knight a5, for example, is also very strong. Knight could come to c4 or to b3. Yeah, white is just lost here. But I went a3, and here I calculated that this simply works for me here. Take on b4. Bishop on b1 is kind of trapped, so he has to go to a2. And maybe what he missed here is that I have this nice move, queen e1 check, forcing queen d1, and now rook b1 check. He has to take king b1 and queen d1. Rook has to go to c1, otherwise I just win his rook. And now a2 was the final stroke, and I'm also winning the rook after king a2. Simply queen c1, and if king b2, I can take on c1 and get a new queen, and I'm just winning here. So yeah, I'm very happy with this game. I think it was pretty high quality. Hope that it will continue like this. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this recap, and hope to see you in the upcoming videos. Thank you for watching.